Hi, I'm Trystan King. I sell real estate in Greater Vancouver area, primarily the Tri-Cities area. Yeah, I was going to school at BCIT, studying marketing. I was originally going to get into a different kind of sales career as I was going to get my BBA from there. My dad has always been into real estate. We were having a conversation one day and he's like, why don't you try selling real estate? And then from there, I committed to going through the licensing and the rest is history. Yeah. He had always developed properties. Like we always lived in properties for kind of like 1 or 2 years. He'd buy, renovate, and then kind of sell off the property, move his way up the property scale. There's always been like a passion for real estate engraved in me. What's funny is I actually saw a photo or something where I saw my project, I guess it was back in grade 5, where I wrote kind of a letter to myself where I'd wanted to be a realtor kind of at that time. And then when I got into real estate, I got really excited about it. I was 22, so fresh out of business school. It was challenging, but I had a good team leader at that time. And what he told me is that as long as as long as you're educated and you study and that kind of thing, people will trust you if you're knowledgeable. It's quite fulfilling when you meet with a buyer or a seller. You kind of identify their motivation and why they're wanting to move. Everyone's different. Every day is different. Doesn't always feel like, I'm working. Like I really enjoy doing what I do. Yeah, so I'd say I've always had that hard work ever since I kind of first started. But I would say, my customer service, I've gained more experience. I've been through a lot more situations. And then just my advisement, seeing more situations are things that I think my clients find value in. I spent probably kind of more elementary years of school in Coquitlam, and then I spent high school more in Burnaby. There's a difference between like learning an area and knowing it real estate wise, and then also like kind of growing up in an area and knowing where, the parks are, like the gas station, that kind of stuff is, it's hard to teach. To kind of show the pros and potentially even cons to a neighborhood, kind of if you spent time in those neighborhoods, it's much more easy to relay. It's broken down into Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam, and Port Moody. So I'd say Port Coquitlam, you have kind of better affordability out in that area because it's a little bit further east. Very accessible community to kind of get into Port Moody, Coquitlam, into Pitt Meadows, that kind of thing. And then you got Port Moody, and that's where you have, the ocean, you got the mountains, the trails. So, you could really live in any of Port Coquitlam, Port Moody, and Coquitlam, and still take advantage of everything that Tri-Cities has to offer as a whole. So what I like about kind of this more suburb area, Coquitlam, Port Moody, Port Coquitlam, is that you're still close west and you're quite accessible to jump onto the Highway 1. You zip into downtown, you can go east to the Fraser Valley sort of thing. But you have a little bit more of a laid back kind of lifestyle, less density. And then I would say Port Moody, they've done a really good job of developing, adding kind of all these master plan communities, everything like that. So I would say that at least in kind of that Port Moody center area, you're going to continue to see a lot of revitalization. And it's exciting. I think people would like to have something different kind of in the area. It's definitely bringing a cool twist in there. I think Coquitlam has a different vibe than your Brentwoods, your Metro towns, that kind of thing. People are wanting to move out and still get like that suburb kind of living, right? So a project like this offering everything that's offering is great.
How do you set yourself apart then from everyone else? Like what Trystan goal?
There's a lot of realtors definitely in Greater Vancouver, but I think that, if you're providing people with value, sound advice, doing the right thing, I think it's quite easy to separate yourself. I actually got a referral to a client not too long ago. It's actually this year. It's from one of my past clients. They had been looking for a property kind of with another agent through the past 8 months. When I first met with them, they seemed rather frustrated in terms of their property search. And we started looking and, we ended up finding the property kind of within that 3 weeks. And it was really rewarding because I could tell that they weren't going to give up, but they were quite frustrated with the process. I always tell my clients that you don't want to buy a property that you feel like you're gonna have to sell within the next 2 years, because as we know, Vancouver real estate can go up, down. But overall, if you do have kind of like a long holding period, you'll typically always do well in real estate here.
What do you see coming in here next, and is it a good thing?
That depends who you ask. I think that personally, a lot of the residents would prefer to keep what's kept Central Coquitlam, these larger lots, more space. But at the same time, I feel that there is a need
to have more attainable price points in these neighborhoods for people to kind of be able to buy into.
One thing Port Moody's doing really well in kind of keeping that vibe and that culture is that the amenities that they're kind of building, like whether it's the breweries, just kind of the different shops, giving it that's still that small town vibe, has been one thing that they're balancing really well, I feel, for the area. Obviously, they got the mountains and the ocean, which is a huge draw to the area. So people who are looking kind of more for that, at least in the city, kind of the more Port Moody center area, are really drawn to, those items that Port Moody has.
How often would you end up taking a client here at the Parkside? Not often enough.